welcome back to the channel. Well, today you find me at home and not on the coast. Well, not just yet anyway. The reason I'm at home is that I'm going to make a short video on how to do modifications. Well, not how to do modifications. What I'm actually going to try and do is take this budget tent, which I got off of Temu for £23, which I can only say is horrendous. It is absolutely horrendous. I pitched it the other day and it doesn't tension out at all, which leads to me believe that it's not had catenary curves cut in the bottom, which makes the tension in the tent when you put it out. The material, I don't even know if it's waterproof. It does have a coating on it and it has got tape seal on it. But what I also noticed that there's a few errors in it, a few stitches missing on it, and a few holes in it as well. It doesn't have any strengthening on any of the corners where the ties are. The ties are just loops as well, and it's double zip, so there's a zip at the front and a zip at the back, and both aren't waterproof. So what I intend to do with this is I'm going to try and upgrade it. I'm going to show you what I do and how I use the sewing machine and stuff to the best of my abilities. You've got to understand, I'm not a seamstress or anything like that. I just basically I'm just doing what Sandra's showing me. Sandra does know how to use a sewing machine, and she learnt that from her mother, and she sort of taught me the ins and outs of it. So what I intend to do with this is I intend to remove one of the zips and change the other zip to a waterproof zip, which I have here, and the gap that's going to be left with the other zip is I'm going to seal that up and close it up, and then tape seam seal it. In fact, I'm going to do a lot of tape seam sealing in it because, as I said, there's a lot of holes in it. I have cinching buckles for all the corners. I'm going to strengthen in all the corners with the iron-on strengthening patches. Now this is the same material that's used on all the 3 FUL tents that you get, the Lanshan 1 and 2. It's just ironed on, so it's heat sealed, and then you get a roller and roll all the little air bubbles in it that you generally get. Bearing in mind I'll be using a household iron to do this. So I'm going to strengthen the tent up at all the corners, etc. What else? I'm going to be putting loops in, these little D loops on the inside so you can attach an inner, but what I intend to do is using elastic, that's what's in here, and these strengthening patches. If you've noticed, a lot of tents now is coming with these just ironed on with hooks in it. I'm going to use that to fix other areas as well, and that's about it. I don't think that I can fix the sagginess on the tent, the catenary curves not being cut into the bottom of it. That's a too big a job at this stage for my skills, basically. So that's what I intend to do, is replace the zip for a waterproof zip, remove one zip and close that side up, replace all the corner ties with the cinching buckles on there, and on the inside I'm going to put hooks on so you can attach any inner to that tent. And then I'm going to take it down the coast, probably this weekend. It's going to be chucking it down. I don't know if I'm going to be sleeping in it. I'll probably just take it down, put it up and leave it, and I'll be in a tent that I know that's waterproof, and then we'll see how it goes. I may do a wee bit of additional waterproofing to it. I have seen some videos online how to test what the hydrostatic head is on here. Basically you get a beaker of water or a tube of water and it sits on top, and you fill it with 1,000 millimetres, and if it soaks through it's less than 1,000 millimetre hydrostatic head. But as I said, the material in this has got holes in it. It's where the sewing machines went through, and it's not been sealed up. What I'm going to do now is I'll show you some close-ups of this tent. I'll bring it up to the camera and show you what I'm talking about and what I'm thinking about replacing. Right, shining a wee bit of light onto this because it's clouded over outside. You have, it is a ripstop material. As I said, the hydrostatic head, I don't know if it does feel like it has got a bit of a coating on it. That's the guy line straps that come in the tent, just sewn over a bit of webbing. So these are going to get replaced so you can cinch it. As I said, if you look at the quality of the finish on it, just the stitching, etc., it's really poor. In areas it's actually coming undone. You have a zip here on the front. Luckily it has got a double zip, so I will recycle these and put them on the waterproof zip that I've got. So I'm going to have to unpick this zip completely and then sew the new one back on. The one on the other side of the tent, I'm going to remove that, and then I'm probably just going to put the flap back over and then stitch the flap, double stitch the flap onto the material, and then seam seal it on the opposite side. While I'm at this end, I'll show you what I mean about holes in it. So where the vent is, you can probably just make that out that they've overstitched. Yeah, if you look here, where the Velcro is, they've overshot. That's a hole in there. None of the Velcro has been tape sealed, so that's sort of stuff that I'll readdress. At the top, the peak of the tent, it's just a bit of material, very similar to the strengthening tape I was on about. This is what they've done in here, a massive big thick hoop. I'll replace that for something not as thick as that and a wee bit lighter. But up into this area of the tent as well, there is no strengthening tape being put in, so when you put your pole back into the top of it there, it's not going to wear away and wear off all this the tape seal. You can see there the tape seal is actually starting to come off there slightly. There's bits. It's a £23 tent. You can't really see any more than that. The weight of this, as it is 700 grams, so it's quite a substantial bit of material. But I'm hoping it'll be a wee bit lighter when I remove the zips. So there you are, down the bottom. Again, you've just got these little guy lines that are not that fantastic. And the way that they've done the guy lines on the outside, you can see a bit of an issue with stitching. So I'll go back round this and re-stitch. So that's actually coming out on that side where they put the toggle in. Where is the guy lines? The guy lines, let's have a look. Guy line attachment points are just this here, and again that's just been sewn into the actual seam of the tent. So what I'll probably do, I'm going to remove these, and then what you do is you put strengthening patch on the other side here. I'll iron that on and then sew on a guy line point there. I do believe there's nothing. So there's nothing on that side where that guy line attachment point is. So you've got no support round here, so when it tugs against it. So I'll be doing that as well. Yeah, and I think that's about it. Tons of loose threads on it, and you know, it's just poor quality. But again, £23. Right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to unpick both the zips, and how I do that is you've got a little tool like this. Get no one focus there. You just pick through and then you undo the stitching. Now that is going to take a bit of time, so I'll rejoin you when I've done that. Okay, so I've removed both zips. You can see that that's the rain flap from that side, and this is the other side here. So before we can actually start sewing zips in, because it's always, I find when I'm doing stuff, do the most difficult thing first, because if it all falls apart then you haven't wasted your time and effort on doing other bits of the tent. So round here and in here we have no well, there is a bit of support. They've sewn across there, but all they've done is folded over there. That one there, believe it or not, they've actually just sewn this part over, which is absolutely bizarre how they've done it. So it isn't really constituting any sort of strength to this corner. So you'll get these, which is the 3 FUL gear. I'm going to say that they're just support patches, but I think they were actually devised for repair patches. So one set of these, in fact, let's not use that set because I've already opened that pack. Another pack here, so this is a new pack. You get 2 large oblong pieces, and there should be, oh, I must have used this one as well. You usually get 2 of these as well, but there's only one. Oh no, sorry, not my mistake. Start to get it. You should get 2 sort of circle ones. So I'm going to keep these ones for attaching the guy lines to the side of the tent, and then all I do is I just mark out another circle and cut these out of here, and then fundamentally, basically what you're going to do is then put a little triangle sort of shape, like pie shaped, into that corner, and then iron it down just to strengthen it up a bit. So that's basically what I'm going to do next. You go ironing any patches onto your tent. As I've said at the start of the video, I really don't know what material this tent is made of, but what I found on previous tents that I've strengthened using the 3 FUL gear patches, I've had my household iron set onto silk. Higher than that it just shrivels up, and any lower it'll just peel off. And that's the setting that I found on this particular iron. So what I would suggest, if you're going to do it, is test it out first on a part of the tent that's not going to affect. What I actually did the last time, I used one of the bags that the tent came in to actually test it on. Yes, you've cut out your little corner patch, so all we're going to do is, I think I said rough side, it's not, it's smooth side down. So smooth side, just tuck it into these seams here because it will stick to them. So if you put it in the corner, this one's sort of struggling. Does not want to go. Doesn't really matter too much about this that's on top, it's more about getting this in as far into the corner as you can go, because you will have the zip that runs down there and you will have a toggle here that's going to pull on that bit of strengthening patch. So once it's down, so again just a bit of paper on it. I've got a roller, just keeps it nice and flat, and then get your iron, place it on top. It doesn't take that long, about 30 seconds it will start to stick to it. Right, you can see that there. It does look like there's little gaps on it, so what I do is I just run over it while it's still hot. This little roller, this roller is actually for car detailing when they're putting the wraps on them. That does it there. you're done. Right, just got to let that cool, and then we will start looking at measuring up and fitting up the waterproof zip. Right, what we're going to do now is take the waterproof tape and we're going to measure it up to fit down both sides of the tent. Okay, before we actually go and start fitting the zip, just show you a couple of things in this tent. So what they've done with this here, this little opening would have had the zip in it, so that would have been stitched onto the zip prior to installing it to this tent. I didn't want to take this off because it's actually seam sealed across here, which just means that I'll create a weak spot here and a weak spot here, because if I seam seal over the top of that, it will eventually come off. So I'm just going to insert the zip in there and then just stitch right across. Now, to help me hold the zip in place when you put it down the side of the doors, what I use is, this is just sewn tape, as I call it. That's a 1/4 inch thick, this one. So it's basically double-sided tape, if I can find the end of it. So you've got a sticky side here, and then you peel the back off there and you've got another sticky side. So you just run that basically down the material, which I'll show you in a minute. And then what I do is, I'll place the zip on, and then I have a whole tub of these little paper clip type things. The bulldog clips, I think they're called, they're the little tiny ones. Then I just clip that down, and then when it comes to putting it through the sewing machine, I just run it and then remove the clips as I go. When you use this tape, especially when you've got material like nylon, it does tend to like bunch up in areas, but it's absolutely fine to peel it back a little bit and start again, and just take it nice and easy so that you haven't got any sort of crinkles in the material, because that will show through on the other side of the tent, and it probably will leave a little gap for water, etc. to get in. And another thing that the sewing machine doesn't like, it will just crumple up the material. Okay, what I've done here is I've got one of my little bulldog clips. I've put the right hand side of the zip in. Bear in mind that the teeth should be innermost and the smooth part goes out. What I'm going to do now is peel off the tape and then start sticking. Just make sure it's all lined up, the zip and the material together. It's quite difficult to do in front of the camera, but you get the general idea, so I'll do this off camera because I need to actually lay it on the floor. Okay, so that's the one side of the zip being attached to the fly sheet door. Things to check when you're doing it is just stick a zip on it. Make sure that you've got a little running gap that you can actually slide the zip up and down, because that bit of material, if it gets too close to the zip, it'll just stick while you're there. Luckily with this zip that I've got in here, it's quite a deep zip, so it is actually covering the holes that's in the material. As you can get a bit, you can see it where the old stitching was. There's a lot of holes in there. Now if I follow that stitching all the way up in the sewing machine, I'll just create more holes, and it'll be like a tea bag basically. It'll end up ripping eventually. So I want to come in ever so slightly on here when I'm running through the sewing machine and run my stitch down that way there. So it might leave a tiny little bit of a flap, but that should ride underneath the zip hopefully. And that's it, all ready to stitch on, which we're going to do in a minute. Right, so what I normally do before I start sewing anything, set the sewing machine up. If you want to learn how to use the sewing machine, I'm not the person to show you. There's plenty videos on YouTube to show you. Right, so what I've done is I've cut up the bag that the tents came in, and I've done a couple of sort of dry runs on stitching to see how the stitching forms. Basically what it tells me, I have to stitch the zip on upside down to make sure I get an even stitch on the other side. So what you see there on that one, if you can see it, is basically the sewing machine this way, so sewing through the material there. But I don't want that. You can't actually see it because I've missed it. In fact, it's on this zip here. It took a couple of attempts to get it right. If you can make that out on the zip there, probably can't. But the proper stitching is on there. So what I learned from that is I've got to run the zip that way. Dead easy with this foot on here because you can run it down the side of the zip there. Where it gets difficult is when you have to put the second line of stitching in. That's when it gets a wee bit more difficult. You have to slide it across there. So I'm quite happy to run it down the face of the zip there and then slide it across there. And what I can do is you can actually angle the needle to go in at a different angle, so I can actually run this part here dead centre, a little notch in the side there, and I should be okay. I'm not going for neatness on this. With these types of sewing machines, unfortunately you can't. I've tried, I've managed to get it a couple of times, then thereafter it doesn't work. It's all to do with the tensioning, the needle, the thread, etc. There's so many factors in it, I can't work it out. Right, so what we're going to do now is sew the first part of the zip on. So that's the first part of the zip put on there, if you can see that. So that's just one run down. I've now got to put a second run on it, which will probably be in about that area there. And then it's tied off at the end there, but not all the way at the bottom, because once you cut it, this bit of hem is where you put the rest of the zip in to stop the zip coming off. But saying that, on this one here, I'll probably replace that with something a bit more substantial to go around there. As I say, that's the first one on. It's not too bad, actually. Looks not bad. Right, a couple of times I slowed it down and put a couple of double stitches in, but what it has done, it has avoided the other holes, so I don't get a rip in it anywhere. Right, this is where it's going to get a bit tricky. So we've done this part of the zip, quite simple, it's just stick down and so on. This part we have the rain flap, then we have, let me see if that goes up, yep, so that's a bit weird. That goes over the top, or is it underneath? Yeah, over the top there also, so you've got the actual door goes over the top of the rain flap, and then underneath that you've also got to connect this. So same process as before, but this time you stick all three onto each other. So we stick the zip on and then stick the the door on. In fact, it will be stick the flap to the door and then the zip to the actual flap. What I've done here is I've stuck the zip onto the rain flap first, and I'm going to run a stitch all the way down in there so it's secure in there. It was just way too slippy to put the rain flap, the zip and the actual the outer door onto this sort of setup. It would mean I would have to push the whole tent through here, and that's not going to work because the material on there is, as I said, is quite heavy. Okay, so that's the zip stitched onto the rain cover, the rain flap basically. So now I will get the tape out and tape this to the outer door of the flag. That's a little sleeve that two bits of zip going. So that's both zips fixed on. So you always leave that off and don't finish it, because you have to fit the zip, and it is really difficult to do, to fit the zip. Now I was going to use the double zips here that came with it originally, but unfortunately they are just a fraction too small, which is a bit weird, because from the back they do look the same. Yeah, so if you want to do an open from the inside, then you come from the opposite side of the zip and zip up there, then tuck the zip away and then sew it across the way so it doesn't go any further, but you've got to zip it up first. So this is the next day. So we've got the zip is now attached. You can see these ends haven't been closed up. I'll do that later on. At the moment I've only put one stitch down, so that's the outer door, the zip and the flap stitched together. I will run another one down there, but it's quite difficult when you've got that part of the zip that's actually interfering with the foot of the sewing machine. But I'm going to run that down later on, probably backwards with the stitch going in at an angle. That's the only way to deal with that. So I've put both the zips in. This one is the hardest zip to put in, because you have to put it on backwards and through here. A little tip when you're doing that, if you can see there, I've actually stripped back some of the zip. When you put it in, a pair of pliers, if you get or a Gerber, just tug it through and it will seat in. As I said, it is probably one of the hardest bits to do, is to put that zip on backwards. Up this end, at the other end here, the second zip's in, dead easy to, so you can open it from the inside. And obviously these are the recycled zips off the original tent. Yeah, so that's closed in, and then I've just run a stitch. Ignore that one there, because that stitch I've actually missed the top of the zip, so that's sewn the zip in. So the zip in that little pocket that we showed you yesterday, that's it all in there, and I've just zipped across, stitched across that. I'll pick the rest of that out later on, and then I'll tape seam that in, and then I'm going to run a couple of stitches up this way, up and down that way as well, just to keep that sock in the inside, let's call it that, stitched together. Because when I finish zipping the zips on, it's only finished here, so I need to run them up there and up there. That's that all sewn up there. I've managed to actually follow the holes that were originally there and made it a lot easier. So that's probably the first time I've stitched something that length onto the tent. So it'll be interesting to see when I go to stitch this flap onto the other side of the back door, as you would call it. Right, so I forgot to remove these, so I'm going to have to remove all the Velcro off there as well, which is going to leave sort of holes, so I'll have to remember to seam seal those as well when I get round to it. Right, so this is all clipped together. So that's the rain cover for the old zip, and to do this it's quite tricky. So what I have to do is run a stitch in line with these clips all the way up. Once I've done that, I then fold that over, that seam over, and then run down again down this side, and that'll get you the traditional double. It's a way of putting the tents together so they don't come apart when they're in strong winds. I wish it was as easy as just stitching it together, but it's not. But this is the traditional way of putting the tent together. So what I'm going to do now is run the first seam down there, and then I'll remove these off and I'll show you what happens on the second part. Right, so that's these two bits being sewn together like that. So you just get that stitch on the edge here. So what happens now here, the best way to demonstrate it, so if I pull the tent tight, you'll see how that wants to flop over that side. So all you're going to do now is run a stitch on the edge there all the way down, which is going to be quite hard. I'm going to have to sort of eyeball that, and that should be that done. It's fine down this end because there's no material after the stitch, but up at the far end, up where the vent is, it's actually going to create a little bit of a kink here, and it is going to take the material in on the tent at the back, which is absolutely fine. As I say, this tent is absolutely shocking. Even when it was all tensioned out, it was saggy everywhere, so hopefully that will bring some of it in. What I'll look at doing once I've got the guy lines on around the bottom and they're all being strengthened and stuff, I'll go back outside and I'll peg it back out, and if I do need to undo some of the stitching in the corners to bring it in a bit, then I'll do that. Right, so all I'm going to do now is I'll stick a bit of the seam tape on here and then fold it over and then run this edge through the sewing machine. Right, hopefully this makes more sense. So that's the second bit running. Ideally, I still haven't figured it out, but I was using the foot as the marker for there, so it would run next to that other stitch. So ideally it could be done over here. But when you actually build a tent, the process puts the first stitch here anyway. So you would actually fold both the materials on top of the cell and you put the first stitch in, then you fold it over, and then you create the second stitch, which you run off the seam that's there, which does make it a lot neater and a bit more presentable. But that's the back door. I'm saying it's the back door, but the second door on this tent, that's it all sealed up. Yeah, not the best stitching in the world, but as I said, when you're using a domestic sewing machine on something that's actually done with an industrial sewing machine, there's not really much you can do about it. It just does a lot of sliding about and stuff, which is unfortunate, but that's solid enough. On the other side here, on the inside, gives us plenty of scope to seam seal it. It should be fine with the tape seam on that. When I'm sewing these in, I've left this still open because when we get round to it, we're going to iron on another support patch here, because that's going to have a cinching buckle fitted to it eventually. So that's why that's sort of all loose. Right, so this is a little timeout bit. I like to stop during projects, even when I'm working on the tents that are really good tents and I'm just modifying them slightly. I've got to think and sort of put it into some sort of logical order when doing it. So up to now, what we've done is we've removed both the cloth zips, we've sealed up one of the entrances, and we've added a waterproof zip and made it two-way to the tent. So logically, the next thing that I've got to do is remove the attachment points, the upper attachment points for the guy lines. I've got to take them out, so I've got to unstitch and take them out. I might actually just cut them because they are seam sealed underneath, and I think doing that, especially with stitching, you've got to, I think Sandra says, I've got to sew across the stitching underneath so that doesn't unravel, and then sew across the top of it and then pick it all out. But I'm going to have a little look at it now, see where we are with that. I might, as I say, I might just cut them off. It might be the easiest option, and then sew on my own guy line attachment points. After that, then it is literally down to removing all the lower attachment points and putting the cinching buckles on. And then after that, we will go to waterproofing the tent. So that's putting the strengthening patches on and putting the tape seal and ironing that on. So we're doing all the heated jobs at the one time. Okay, if you can see that there where my finger is, that's where I've sewn across there. and at this side here I've sewn across here just to stop that stitching coming out when I unpick all this to remove the upper guy line point. That's the guy line, one of the guy lines removed, and it just leaves us a little pocket there. So all I'm going to do now is just clear some of this thread up and stitch it all back together again. Right, so first upper guy line point removed, and that's all been stitched back up and sealed. Right, that's the last of the upper guy line attachment points been removed. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take all the lower ones off, and before I replace them with the buckles, I'm going to strengthen these up, but I'm going to do all the strengthening at the one time. So the next thing to do is get all these off. Right, what I'm going to do now is going to tape seam up where I took out the upper guy line points. To about that size there. And the tape, this tape's slightly different, smooth on top, rough on the bottom, so the rough goes on to where you want to apply it. That's got all the glue on it. Use a bit of grease toothpaper for this time. You'll know when it's adhering because it changes from a sort of opaque to see-through. Is it opaque? It's slightly misty, cloudy, and then it changes once it's adhered. So I've used this on some of the tents I've modified when I've done the seams, and it works absolutely fine. Right, so leave that on there, but we're not finished just yet. So I want to take one of these patches, and this is where we're going to stitch on the outside guy line attachment point. Quite careful because obviously you just put the tape seam underneath. What you don't want to do is to melt that, it will melt. It won't be too hot. Just try and roll out, get into contact with the fabric. Not too bad at all. That's support patches been put on and all the locations where we're going to be attaching guy lines to it, so they're all done. So basically down one seam we've got that. So now we can do stuff with tidying up the tape, the ribbon that goes around the bottom, and finishing up the doors, etc. And then it's attaching the points to this. And then we'll just use a bit of liquid seam seal on that, and then the tent should be good to go. Right, so that's what used to be the back door tape seamed. I'll probably go over this again once it's cooled down a little bit. It's getting a bit hot. The good thing about the tape sealing, don't know if it picks up on the camera, you get the white on the edges there. Just greaseproof paper over the top of it again and just give it another. You see it coming through the greaseproof paper, you see the lines. You know it's hot enough, and then just run the edge of your iron down the side. And that should sort that out. Like that. So that's all gone. So I'll finish that off in a second. Right, so the next thing that I've done is that I'm making up the attachment. So that's the quick release for across the front of the door at the bottom. That's just to stop it from any zip creep, because I have put two-way zips on there. With the waterproof zips, they are a lot stiffer. They don't move as much as cloth ones, but I'm just putting that on just to show you that it can be done. These are all the buckles for the lower guy points, and what I'm going to do with these is I'll put them over like this and sandwich the material in between, and on four corners I will be inserting another little buckle here, so that certain ends that you use, you can just hook them on when you're setting up the tent, so you can put your four corners in, and that's the whole idea of that. To stitch these up, the stitch that I use on the sewing machine is the buttonhole stitch. So there's settings on sewing machines for doing buttonholes, and that's the one that I put in there. It's massively a lot stronger, and that's the same stitch that I'll use when I'm attaching this to the tent. So it goes all the way through across that way and through across that way. So it'll be two attachment points, and I said on four we'll have a little buckle inside underneath. In fact, picture paints 1,000 words. So that's the outer and inner of the tent. Basically that'll go over there, using the seam as a guide there as well. So that'll go in there, and in four corners I'll just insert one of these D-rings so you can attach your inner to it. In fact, that is upside down, it'll be like that. Right, so what I'm going to do now is attach the lower attachment points, and then we'll move on to doing the upper guy line attachment points. Right, so that's the clips all sewn on now, so that's all the way around the bottom of the tent. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get some cordage again and do the, if I can find one, and then put the upper loops for the guy lines up here. Right, so that's the upper loop sewn on. You can see the support patch that's underneath there, and it's just a loop over with a cord, and then again I use the same stitch for buttons to fill in, to attach it to the actual tent, and try to run it up the seam as best as I could. Right, that's the last of the attachments done, so there's your sort of quick release over the zip there, and your two front toggles. So all I've got to do now is on the flaps here, is to reinstall the bit of Velcro here to keep the flap over the top of it. It might seem you won't need it with having the waterproof zip, but this would just flap about in the wind anyway. So going to do that, stitch them on, and then I will need to tape seam that when it goes down, and also I'll then go and have a bit of hole hunting, because this whole part of the seam here is missing the zip. I was going to try and run a stitch down there, but it's really too close to the edge, and I'm not that skillful with it, to be perfectly honest with you. So I'll have to put a bit of tape seam underneath that and then iron that down, but I'll need to be really careful with this zip that I don't melt it. It's just a bit of double-sided tape on the back. Hopefully try and peel it off. It does actually stick quite a bit, and then drop it on there. Now the main reason I'm sticking this on is that my experience with Velcro, when you're stitching it, it can get thread all caught up in it, and it is quite difficult. I think what I should do is put a bit of paper over the top and stitch over the bit of paper, then peel the paper off. I think that's the safest way to do it. There you are. Sewn on, all done. The way to sew this on is when you get to the corners, leave the needle in when you're turning the material around, or you'll be chasing yourself about the place. But right, another 3 of these to add, and then I've just got to put all the guy lines on, and then we'll go and do a wee test pitch. Right, so that's the Makito budget tent at £23 off of Temu, all set up. Now I haven't got a before and after. Unfortunately, when I went to start editing the videos last night, the footage that I took on my old camera, it's only recorded sound, so hence it's broken. We knew it was broken after that, but I thought we did capture the footage, but we haven't. But looking at the tent at the minute, if you look at that door there, you can see how slack and flappy it is at the moment. If you can imagine, the whole tent was like that before we put the cinching buckles on around the tent. Right, so we'll go have a little look. Right, I've changed the microphone on this. This camera's got multi sort of direction microphones, so hopefully you should be able to hear me over the cars. But you can see here, got a bit of work to do. There's still holes in the tent there. You can see it with the sunlight there, but there is bits in there that I've got to seam seal up. You can see the length of this support for the vent, and it's absolutely pointless. So again, I think we'll change that as well. Lets a little bit of air in, but this is my biggest concern, and this was generally about the whole tent, how flappy this part is. Now it's pretty good all the way around, apart from this door, so I'll maybe look at doing something about that, taking putting a couple of stitches in, bring it in a little bit so it tightens it up. Now you can probably see better here, the support patch on there. The old one was in there, and that's the ones that we've replaced, which does lift it out quite a bit. Again, this one on the back, and this is the door that we've closed. A couple of loose threads there by me, but not loose, just need taken off. You can see that there. Not a bad job actually. Not a bad job for a non-industrial sewing machine. You can see down the bottom there where we've cinched it in here as well. It makes it nice and taut. You just need to trust me when I say when I first pitched it, it was horrendous. It was just flapping about everywhere. It's not too bad, so we've only got the one little area there that I need to patch up at the moment, and seam seal here. Right, so here's the door. So that's the Velcro we've replaced, and the waterproof zip. So I should be able to undo this, and it shouldn't really fly away because we've got our buckle. And you do get that when you've got two like guy points at the doors. So I'll take this door off first, and we'll have a wee look inside. So inside, you basically get about the same space as you would in a Lanshan 1. And a matter of fact, the inner that I'm going to be putting in it is from my old Lanshan 1. But I've still got the hooks to put in on the side. You can see down there, you can see the little ringlets that I put all the way around. And attach the bottom of the tent onto. Yeah, it's about the same size as a Lanshan 1. I can see more daylight coming through little holes in it. I have to have another look. I don't think the camera can pick it up, but I can definitely see daylight coming through little puncture holes. But it is what it is. They say £23 off of Temu. The rear vent's pretty much doing nothing as well. Doesn't look all that. Yeah, they've overstitched that as well, so I'm going to probably have to seal those up also. Right, so that's the Mosquito tent all modified. Say not modified. It was just a very, very poor tent, and a little bit of work has fixed some of the issues. The main issue was when it was basically pitched, it was like a plastic bag in the wind. It was absolutely ridiculous. And even there's a little breeze blowing just now, it's a lot better than it was. You're just going to have to take my word on that. Unfortunately, I haven't got the footage anymore. Yeah, was it worth it? Well, considering that I'm going to be making my own tent, yeah, it was a good exercise. I was going to go and use this tent for one night out to see what it was like, and then I was going to strip it down, take it apart, and use it as a template. But I don't think it'd be a reliable template with the way it's sagging at the top there. I think possibly probably pitch it a wee bit higher. Could maybe put the extension pole from the MLD in it to see if that takes the creasing out at the top. Right, that's not a bad second pitch for the Mosquito tent. It looks 100% better than it did in its first initial pit. I'm really gutted that I haven't got the footage of the first pitch. I've got the sound of the first pitch but not the footage, but that's why we'll now know that my camera had broke. This one, still get my head around it. It is a lot more, I'm not going to say it's complicated, it's completely different. It's touch screen. In the old one, you used to just touch the screen to focus and stuff, but this one's fully touch screen and you swipe, and also it's like having a mobile phone. And the memory, geez, or the sort of the memory, the size of the files it creates, it's just ginormous. I'm probably going to have to knock off the 4K stuff and just shoot in HD for the time being until I get used to it, because I'm really worried I won't be able to import the files into the computer, and that computer's quite a good computer, to be fair. It's got quite a bit of memory on it, but I think it will struggle with these files. Anyway, that's by the by. So what's the future of the Mosquito tent? So there's a few holes in it, probably can't see there. There's another trail line where I've probably clipped it with a sewing machine. You can see it's the actual sewing machine's cut that bit of thread there. So there's a couple of holes that I need to repair in it, and a bit of seam sealing tape I've got to put across it as well. And then what I'm going to do with it, I'm going to watch the weather, nip down to the coast when it's windy and raining, and then we're going to pitch it, and I'm going to spend the night in it. I've got an inner there, I've got a spare inner from a Lanshan one, so I'll use that with it, and then we'll see how we got on. And then my future intentions with it was to then take it completely apart and use it as templates for my tent build that I'm going to be doing. But I think this is probably not a good example to strip down and use as a template. So there's so many things wrong with it. The main thing is the cantonary curves that's in it. So the cantonary curves are like this material here, from corner to corner is cut under. So it's in like a U shape, and then when you pitch it out and you pin it out, it tightens it, and that tightens the whole tent all the way down. It was Ray from RS Outdoors. He got in touch with us, and he sent me a ton of stuff which has been really useful to do a tent build. So he sent me a ton of stuff and explained to me what's wrong with my prototype. If you haven't seen my prototype, if you go to the social part of this site on YouTube, you'll see some pictures that I made the tent out of weed barrier. So this is not a great example. I've got my templates there. I'm just going to go with it and adjust the bottoms and put the curves in, so I've got the curves sewn. At least I know they're there, and then when I stitch them together, if it causes any issues, I can obviously cut it back again. But using this as an example, nah, probably not. If I was using this tent when I bought it off of Temu for £23, I'd really be in trouble with it. It was absolutely shocking. It would be flapping about. It would flap about in the wind, and with the holes in it, with any sort of driving rain, you're going to get soaked. You're going to have a miserable time in it. So hopefully I've made it a wee bit better. I should have done a before and after, but as I said, I've not got that footage really. You're just going to have to take my word on it. Any questions about the modifications? Well, I'm going to call them upgrades and no modifications, and upgrades on this tent. Just stick it in the comments below. If you've got any suggestions or anything you think I've done wrong, I could have done better, again, stick it in the comments below. It'd be nice to know a bit more about stuff before I start using the expensive. And I'll tell you now, the nylon, the proper sil nylon or treated nut, is really expensive. It's not cheap at all. Was this value for money doing this? No, it wasn't. The bits and bobs I've got to price it all up, I've purchased all this before. To do this to one of these tents, £23, and buy all the bits and bobs, it's cheaper to go and buy a Lanshan, I would say. You could go and get a Lanshan off AliExpress, which is all seam sealed and all done and dusted for the money that I've spent on this. And most of the money went into the strengthening, so the corners, the iron-on patches. So these patches here, for one pack of them, it's £9.99, and I've probably used 2 on this to get it all done out, all the corners and the top guy line attachments. So yeah, so that's up to, let's say, 50. The little bits, the clips and the string, the guy line, even the waterproof zip, really cheap off of Temu. I mean, mega cheap. Sandy gets me all that stuff. She does all that sort of shopping for me, and I mean really cheap. You're talking about like call it the sundries for the tent. You're probably not spending over a tenner. So if you're looking at modifying your tent, that's probably the best way to go, is purchasing all those little bits on Temu. A lot cheaper than AliExpress, and if you do, I think if you do a bulk sort of order, you get things cheaper, I believe. I watch Mick Outdoors, he knows more about it than me. So yeah, it wasn't a good enough tent to fix in the first place. Let's just say that. It was absolutely shocking. But we'll see when we go out. The proof is in the pudding, as I say. We'll see when we go out, when we stick it on the coast and get some rain on it. And it'll probably be quite an interesting day, I would think. When it rains here, it rains. Absolutely. It's like being up in Scotland. We've got like 16 hours straight non-stop rain. So it'll be quite interesting to see how this and myself gets on in it. Again, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you want to see any of the future content, and I'll see you all again. Take care, everyone.